Welcome to the Security by Default podcast, the podcast where firewalls are hot, passwords are long and strong, and cybercriminals are probably listening to. I'm your host, Joseph Carson, ethical hacker, security nerd, and the guy who reads the terms and conditions so you don't have to. Each episode will break down the weird, wild world of cybersecurity, minus the jargon, and plus a few laughs. Whether you're pro or just here to figure out what the hell zero trust really means, you're in the right place. Let's get secure and have a little fun on the way too. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Security by Default podcast. I'm the host of the show, Joe Carson, Chief Evangelist and also Advisor CISO at Segura, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm always looking around for interesting topics, great exciting ideas, thought leadership, and bring in guests who can really add interesting insights for you. And today's topic's an interesting one. It's one that's let's say, always sitting on two sides of the fence where we're looking at the security aspects of things, but also the legal side of things. I think it's really important that we talk about the topic of cyber law. So I brought on a guest who's got a background and experience from a legal perspective and legal side of things. So Pamela, welcome to the show. Welcome to the episode. If you want to give the guests a bit of knowledge about you as a person, maybe your origin, how you got into the industry. Did you start in cyber or did you start from a legal side of things, and some fun, interesting things about yourself?
Okay, so my name is Pamela Victor Ibitamuno, and I'm a lawyer, and I started the journey with penetration testing after university. I had my penetration testing, but I just learned a few things about penetration testing, and it really got me interested because, I'm a very curious person. I ask a lot of questions. I think one of the things that really made me want to get deeper was after I lost my Bitcoins because I was occasionally savage, and the same person I had gotten it from had my wallet address and my private keys and was able to hack back into my wallet and then transfer the Bitcoins that I had into their wallet. So I already also had another experience where I was impersonated. Someone impersonated me, used my identity, and got money from different people. And people always thought that I was the one that did that. So I'm like, how do these bad guys think? What really goes on their minds? How do they come up with all these strategies to be able to cover their tracks without people knowing that they are the ones that did these stuff? So I'm like, okay, one way you can actually secure is to think like the bad guys. Let's do this. Let's see what happens. And that was how I started with penetration testing. And then after a few months, I had to stop and go to the law school in my country to become a lawyer. And I was just thinking about how to merge my interests, my interest in the cyberspace and also my passion for law. And I just didn't want to go outside of the legal field. I'm like, okay, you know what? There's still a need for someone like me that has my interests, that has my passions, my talents, and let's see how we can merge this thing together. So I'm like, okay, what opportunities are there? And I'm like, you know what? Let's look into cyber law. And that was how the cyber law journey started for me. Yeah, so I've worked with technology law firms and cyber non-governmental organizations in Africa. And I'm currently studying for my master's in cyber law here in the United Kingdom. And I've been also invited by the United Nations and Council of Europe to sit on global discussions for cyber crime and internet governance. And I'm so excited to be on podcast today with Joseph Carson.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I mean, it's great to have you here. One of the things that's really interesting is that from your journey, usually when I speak to a lot of lawyers and I sit in panels and we have discussions, their background was very much on the law side of things. And then they kind of moved into the cybersecurity aspect of things. Yours is very much reverse. So you started off in penetration testing and also, had been victim of crimes and then followed your passion in getting into the cyber law side. That's very different than most of the legal aspects that I've kind of had interactions with in the past. But what do you see? What's one of the big fundamentals when you think about your experience from the security, also having victim as well, and law. Where do you think, where's the overlapping areas? Where do you see the interactions and the correlation between the two?
Okay, so one of the overlapping areas is the difficulty for like legal professionals to really understand the technicalities, like really happens. So there's this difficulty in really regulating. So it feels like we're trying to come up with laws, we're trying to come up with regulations, and we are doing this so quickly to make sure that there's a regulation. But are the regulations actually solving the problems that's been there, or are they like creating more problems? Because there's this haste, okay, there's a trend in technology, there's this innovation, AI is there, we need a regulation. So there's this haste to come up with a regulation. And it feels like we just want us to have that regulation. So we know that, okay, there's a regulation, but are we really handling, is it really tackling the problems that have made that regulation, the need for that regulation to arise? So that is another thing. And another thing that I have also seen play out is the difficulty for judges to really appreciate like forensic investigations, forensic evidence in court, evidence. Sometimes the fact that you can have a very good case, then like because of the delay in the judicial system, you can lose data and the cyber criminal goes scot-free, nothing is done. So we've seen cases where a lot of people have been tried for cyber, but not so many of them have been convicted. So I think that is another overlapping area. And one thing I really also find interesting is that when it comes to security, when it comes to cyber security, it is not just for the government. Yes, the government is really regulating. I feel like there has to be some sort of partnership that makes it easier. There's also issues of extradition when the crimes have been committed in different countries. So, like, there are lots of things that have to be treated and really looked into.
Absolutely. And one of the things I do find that most cybercrime is cross-border, which always makes it very challenging, which means that typically it's not a single law enforcement can, completely investigate the crime alone. They tend to have international cooperation. And that definitely does mean that from a jurisdiction perspective and also from a timeline perspective, to your point, that a lot of the digital crimes can take much, much longer to go through the criminal justice system. And also then the challenge is about the chain of custody of evidence, is how do you make sure that it's non-reputative when it comes into the law side of things. Because how can you prove who was sitting behind the keyboard on the computer at the exact time when in many cases it might be committed from a cyber cafe or an internet cafe, which has many people touching that computer over that space of time. So the jurisdictions definitely a massive challenge, and also chain of custody is a major challenge as well.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting about Microsoft that so many other companies can learn from. Like, I think Microsoft they are doing a lot to like get cyber criminals, not just like convict them, like getting sanctions, but also getting orders from the courts to restrain them. One of the things that I really find interesting about Microsoft is the fact that they are also building like partnerships with governments. I think there was the recent case where they had a cyber criminal in Egypt, and because of the relationship that they had with the government of Egypt, they reached out and they were able to get that. So I think like different other technology companies can have that partnership with the government of different countries, so it's easier and form that relationship. Yeah, so it's also helps. And then I think another thing I just thought about is the issue of hacking. So there's still this misconception about hacking. Like once you say you're a hacker, everybody looks at you like you're a bad guy.
Yes, the branding side that we have, which everyone assumes that the term hacker without context is malicious.
Exactly. And I think that is another issue that the law is facing. In some jurisdictions, they are able to differentiate ethical hacking from malicious hacking, but in so many jurisdictions, they are still the same. And even in the jurisdictions where they have been able to differentiate ethical hacking from malicious hacking, there's still an overlap. So there's one interesting thing about criminal law is that the first thing you have to like prove that this is actually unlawful And then the act that has been committed is unlawful. And then you also have to prove that the elements for a crime have been found in that act that has been committed. And then, like, one of the things that constitutes the ingredients or the ingredients of crime is that it has to be an actus reus and mens rea, depending on the jurisdiction. So, like, for here in my home country, there has to be mens rea and actus reus. Here in England, so there has to be mens rea and actus reus. So, like, the mens rea is the act in itself, the act been committed. The mens rea, sorry, rather, is the intention. Mix
Yep.
that up. The intention of committing a crime, and then the actus reus is the act that has been committed. So you have to prove that this person had the intention of committing that crime, and then he went ahead to commit that crime in itself. So normally for different crimes, you have to prove that there's a mens rea and actus reus. But I think that the cybercrime is treated differently because they only require that there's this proof of the actus reus, and then the mens rea is not really considered. And I'm like, it's crime. Even if it was committed on the internet, it's still crime. So why is the elements of crime not playing out? There has to be that this person had that intention to commit the crime, because I might have committed this like not intentionally. Maybe I was doing it for the good of the society. Maybe I was hacking the system to find vulnerabilities, and it's for the good of the public. And because I did that out of my good intention, I'm not prosecuted. Like, it doesn't really make sense. But because there's also a difficulty in proving the mens rea, I think sometimes some security researchers might be confused, and they're like, doesn't mean that I really have to prove that I had that intention. But in criminal proceedings, it is less for the prosecution to prove. So, like, it is not the responsibility of the cybersecurity professional to prove that had the intention, and that also makes it difficult for prosecutions to prove. So there's a tendency that the actual criminals can also like go scot-free. So I feel like there has to also be a lot done, like some trainings for prosecutors and the judges to be able to appreciate these things. If not, it's going to continue going in circles, and we would not be able to go forward from this. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I mean, I've been in that situation myself a number of times as a security researcher, and it's been fortunate enough that because of my connections and peers, that they know that all my motivations, intentions have always been for the making the world a safer place. But that's not always the case. I remember there's been the cases in the U.S. where the journalists, by simply hitting the F11 on the browser, shows the HTML code, and that action then led to basically it being considered a hacking crime. But the motive was there in order to make the intentions was to make it safer and to report a vulnerability and a disclosure. So it's always that case that I think you're absolutely right that not just the action, but the motivation has also to be very important. Was this person's intention to report a problem? It's almost like a whistleblower in many cases, that they're showing that there's this risk and abuse, potential risk to society, and therefore they're reporting it. One of my favorite panels I've ever sat on was many years ago. It was about 12 years ago in Estonia, and it was the national cert. And the panel was actually a panel of law enforcement, different law enforcements from around the world, and then there was the panel of hackers, and that was interesting because we were having a conversation about responsible vulnerability disclosure, about how to make sure you're doing it without breaking the law, because in many cases you might be in a gray area, a very, very fine line about whether you're stepping over it or not. And it was a fascinating panel. I'd love to run it again because it was so intriguing. That a lot has changed over the years. One question I've got for you is that, one thing is how far back is the law with technology? Because we're seeing technology advance so quickly, especially in the last year to two. We've seen the law getting to the point where, for example, we've had AI acceleration so quick and so fast. How outdated is the law, and how can we address it so that we can make sure it's much more dynamic and adaptive and agile to the technology advancements?
Okay, so like recently there was the Council of Europe had like a convention, and one of the things is that the AI Act. But the thing is, it also depends on different jurisdictions to like adopt this and also implement their own laws that govern their own jurisdiction. So I'm going to be talking from the jurisdictions that I'm in. And like there is currently not one ratified document that is an act that governs artificial intelligence. We have ethics, we have policies, but there's no act that really governs artificial intelligence. But I think it's something that is being worked on in the moment. Another thing is the procedures of making laws. So it's not something that just happens. It has to go through different phases before it becomes like passed and becomes a law. So yeah, I think that is another thing. The law is, from my perspective, I feel like the law is still backward. It's still trying to catch up with a lot of innovations that is happening, and more innovations would still keep on happening. But there's something that I always say. It is not that the lawmakers have to keep on making laws every time new technology comes, but how vast can it be that it is left for the judiciary to be able to interpret these laws to apply to the given situations at hand, be able to cater for the given situations at hand? So that is another thing. But another thing is that some judges are not able to appreciate the law very and to do justice to what is really happening, because like some of them are aged in trying to get used to this technology. Is one hand, should there be judges that have been specifically trained to tackle um technological problems, or could it be general judges that have to sit down there and just apply legal principles to the given law? Should there be a specific technological code? I think that is subject to argue. Yeah, but I think this is really what I think, because there's no way that we can just keep on bringing up new laws. The issue is going to be enforceability. So can we draft laws that can be wide to cater for situations and leave it to the judges to interpret, or to the judiciary to interpret these laws in the best way possible to do justice to whatever situation or difficulty that arises in courts. Yeah, and then also lead as precedents for other situations that can come up too. But yes, like I said, this is also subject to argument. Yeah.
Yeah, years ago, I was one of the technical reviewers on the EU GDPR, which was a very interesting experience for me. And I always go back. I think it was a very good kind of, regulation and focus and a good starting point. I will always go back and think about things that if I was to do it again and be part of that process, what I would do differently. Because a lot of the interpretation was around things about the interpretation of personal information and personal identifiable information. And I think that was an area that we could have had a lot more clear transparency and context around. Definitely improvements. I do like the evolution that then happened with the EU AI Act, because it took much more rather than a technology-based approach. It took an impact-based approach, and I like that much more, because it doesn't matter how much the technology advances and how it changes, but how it has an impact to society from a criticality perspective. So that was a much more definitely a more kind of broader term, to your point, is that it's able to catch a lot of different scenarios by having that type of definition into the risk of life and the impact of society, and taking it from a risk-based approach rather than it's almost looking at the technology and trying to regulate the technology, but that's not what we're doing. What we're trying to do is really look at the technology and think about how harmful can it be to society if we don't put the right rules in place to make sure. That's my concern about AI in general at the moment, is that there is no rules. And without the rules, then if it's abused very quickly, then sometimes it's hard to go back. It's hard to retrofix things later. And that's always a challenge. What some of the areas do you think around, when we look at the crossover, the future outlook of the legal side and the law side? Where do you see this direction? Are you seeing it? One thing is potentially is AI helping a lot more with actually people going and having AI cyber law bots be able to help interact and educate them. Do you see that as something that is a good thing or a bad thing, or what's your view around having a lot more automation, or are people getting more personalized legal counsel, especially around AI?
Okay, so I think there are pros and cons. What I'm thinking is that it could be of an advantage if we're able to use AI to like track criminals and able to automate legal processes. Certain things that the AI may not be programmed to do. Example, giving specific legal advices. There are things that can be automated, like documentation processes can be coming up with maybe going through scrutinizes very bulky documents. All those things can be automated. But like really giving personalized legal advices, because you as a lawyer, you understand the situation based on your experiences, and like you understand emotions, you understand how
It's
this thing,
empathy, and
yeah, you understand empathy and ethics, and you know how something can be impact on an individual negatively or positively. You can see it. So I think like when it comes to that, those processes cannot be automated. I think there was recently an argument about the AI becoming being able to represent clients in court. Yeah, and being able to go to court and defend like clients. And it was said that the AI does not have a legal personality. It's not a legal person. Companies building the AI set to like be legal persons, but the AI is not an illegal person and cannot go to court. The AI has been qualified, did not write bar exams, so like it cannot go to court to like represent people in court. But when it comes to like automating processes, it could really be of a great advantage to lawyers and help us even in our practice of law. Really certain things that the AI cannot do, like really giving personalized legal advices based on the situations. Because every case, their situations can be similar, they can be very similar, but they are not still the same.
I completely agree. I think I've been seeing, and also for me, it comes down to the context and accuracy of data. Is that the machine learning and the data that a lot of these systems. One of the things that when I was part of the EU AI Act, we did this workshop and working group, which is around the acceptable use of law enforcement using AI-based systems. And when you get into that situation, even the same in law, is that you always have to be right every single time. The moment that system is ever wrong, it puts into question all of the previous cases or all the previous advice that system has ever given. And that's one of the challenges. I remember the case in the US where one of the legal counsels used AI to create cases and information to advise, and end up creating hallucinations, referencing cases that didn't even exist.
Yeah.
I remember the case you're referring to recently where somebody was actually using a deepfake as a legal counsel and reading off basically AI transcriptions. It gets into, is you're absolutely right, is that it has to be accountable. There has to be people that's accountable for the impacts and results of the decisions from a legal system. So it can't be done by a non-real person who is not accountable. So I think that's what's important. And you're absolutely right. I think that, yes, a lot of the systems can be quickened through automated processes. The documentation, the filing, the notes, a lot of those can be accelerated. Absolutely. But what it gets into is just to kind of, for example, I did a lot of incident response last year. And when my interactions in the second half of last year, a lot of the interactions with the criminals was basically used to chat directly with them and negotiations and basically ransom demands. You're talking about recovery side of things. And the second half, you're now started talking to AI chatbots, not the criminals directly. So you've now got this intermediary who you're talking to. And those chatbots, they don't care. They don't care about who's the victim. They don't care about how much data, what the type of data is. There's no empathy. They just have a number. And it was very, very difficult. There's then no negotiations. It's basically just an answer and question. So this is really, I think, in the legal system is that, accountability, explainability, and empathy needs to be part of the entire process, because at the end of the day, it's humans we're talking about. It's not, it has a big impact, and it's hard to reverse. It's these things are, if even more problematic to change later, once the decision's already been made. So a question for yourself is, how do you stay up to date? What's the resources you use? How do you get your knowledge? You mentioned you participate in some of the United Nations working groups. What's the things you do to stay up to date?
Okay, not working groups like this. A recent United Nations put up the Octopus conference that was held like some couple of weeks ago, and it was a gathering of different experts, like the governments, non-governmental organizations, private sector, and people that are actively working in the industry, like bringing their knowledge from different jurisdictions and how each jurisdiction has been able to tackle some things and what other jurisdictions can learn from that jurisdiction. And talking about AI and cybercrime and like different issues when it comes to gender, like different issues in different jurisdictions, sharing their perspective and how other jurisdictions can learn from them. And then like the IGF was just basically about internet governance, different jurisdictions too, but it was a bit broad because it wasn't just talking about cyber law or cybercrime. Talking about data governance, like from different sectors, and how different industries have faced some challenges and what other industries can also learn from them. One way I actually stay updated is like online, like trying to read articles. And then I think another thing I did was to set my Gmail. So like I subscribe for some articles and then it just pops up on my Gmail. Like whenever a country maybe does anything related to a new cyber criminal law, I get updates on my Gmail. Or maybe the country is signing into like the Malabo Convention for Africa and other necessary laws. Like it just pops up and I go through, just read it, and I guess
almost like an RSS feed. Go back to old school methods to stay up to date in the modern world, which works great. I do the same. I've got lots of RSS feeds that comes in, so it allows me to kind of tailor my news and kind of social inputs as well. So it's been fantastic having you on the show, and it's really insightful and really great hearing some of your thoughts and ideas around some of the major challenges. It is a very complex area, cyber law. And when you combine it with cybersecurity, that is a massive challenge. And it's great to have people like yourself really tackling it and looking at it and trying to be creative and innovate. And one is, make sure that we make the world a safer place. What's the best way for the audience if they do want to connect with you or have questions later? What's the best way that they can reach out to you?
Okay, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter and Instagram. For like Twitter and Instagram, it's Legal Pamela. And then LinkedIn, it's Pamela Victor Ibitamuno.
Okay. Fantastic. I'll make sure that in the show notes that I'll put the links in so it's easier for the audience to find you. So we'll add those links in the show notes. It's been fantastic having you on. Many thanks. And hopefully we'll get to meet at a conference or somewhere in the future and have a more in-depth chat. So thank you for being on the show, and it's been a pleasure. So for the audience, this is Pamela bringing you all the updates and latest on cyber law. So for everyone, this is the Security by Default podcast. Tune in every 2 weeks for the latest episodes, latest news and guests, and hopefully at the end, making you more knowledgeable, making you be able to take this information back and apply it to your day job, and also, hopefully stay safe and make the world a safer place. Thank you. Take care and stay safe.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of the Security by Default podcast, where the only thing we leave unpatched is our sense of humor. I've been your host, Joseph Carson, reminding you to update your software and rotate your passwords. Subscribe, share, and review the podcast. And please stay safe, stay weird, and we'll catch you next time.